All right, guys, how's it going? I have something new today. I put together a new 2DH deck very recently based on the fact that Nin, the paint artist, probably my favorite commander in all of EDH, was recently reprinted in the Commander 2017 set. And as a result of that, her price dropped from, I think, roughly $6-ish down below that critical threshold of 5, which made her legal for this niche format that's played at Card Kingdom in Seattle and a few other places. But it's a very interesting format. Just to remind you how it works, the format dictates that every card in your deck, with the exception of the general, has to cost $2 or less on the MTG stocks price point. And generals are allowed to be up to $5. The deck that I'm actually using adheres to that, with the exception of 2 cards, which I just added because I'm playing with the deck online, and I felt that I'd be at too big of a disadvantage against people that were just playing regular decks. So the 2 cards that I changed, instead of using Jeweled Amulet, I'm using a Soul Ring, which is actually often under $2, especially online, but it is banned from the 2DH format for obvious reasons, even when it's been cheaper than $2. And I'm also running Rolling Earthquake in place of Aether Spouts, which is kind of a non-interactive, extremely defensive, clunky blue card that you kind of need to use anyway when you have few sweepers and nothing like Cyclonic Rift. But obviously Rolling Earthquake, much, much more powerful and is not 2DH legal, even though it was reprinted in Through the Vault's Annihilation. And I think it's a couple bucks, maybe $3 or something online as well. So not a budget card, but those are the only 2 cards that are that don't adhere to that rule. But if the rest of the deck is so cheap, if you set a particular price threshold of maybe $20 or less, you could easily include both Soul Ring and Rolling Earthquake if you wanted to play this deck exactly. Got to pause real quick. I've got someone at the door. All right, so I just met the DHL people. And so looking at my opening hand here, I have a pretty phenomenal draw as far as the budget deck is concerned. Notice it's got Myriad Landscape in it because it has a predominance of islands. I think I should probably play this card in my Dralnu deck as well, even though I'm reluctant to play with so many come-into-play tapped lands when I have so many 2-mana artifacts. It's kind of a combination where you can just be in molasses if you spend the first few turns playing tapped lands and come into play tapped artifacts or artifacts that don't make mana immediately. And even though you kind of ramp ahead, you might be so far behind that you can't come back. My opponent's playing with Admiral Beckett Brass. This is clearly some sort of piratey theme deck in Grixis colors. You could certainly do better, but I mean, obviously you're going to run into casual people who just play to have fun in the commander room, so I don't begrudge this guy. This guy's playing Horobi Death's Whale, and he announced that he was also playing a budget deck at the beginning, which is kind of cool. Not a commander you see very often, but it's very easy to combo with, given the amount of cool things that target repeatedly as artifacts are in black. And finally, Nath of the Gilt Leaf, which is a pretty spiky general and can pair really well with all the green and blacks mechanics. It's not as good as Gitrug Monster, I think, but it's definitely up there in terms of the black-green generals. And I am not going first. I think it's actually Holonomic, but I'm snap-keeping this hand. The double Earthquake thing is fantastic, too, because it just gives me the ability to potentially crush the board. I can't play with Winnow Orb in this deck, which is really unfortunate and frustrating. I'm sure you all know how dependent I am on that deck on that card for multiplayer, but, you know, what can you do? I do have Steel Hellkite instead. So everyone's sorting out their mulligans here. Forest Bird of Paradise. Alrighty, off we go. You're going to see chat messages popping up periodically in the corner there. There's quite a bit of banter going on during the game. Alright, so I got an island. I'm just playing the Myriad Landscape first. Floodplain. The Mirage Fetch Land. Alright, Mr. Horobi has nothing. Unfortunately, there's no Soul Rings or Crypts hitting the board yet. We go back to Mr. Holonomic, and I see him cast Waste Away, or Waste Not, which is a phenomenally powerful card, actually, in multiplayer, and certainly pairs well with Nath of the Gilt Leaf. The fact that you can get all these cool effects. Obviously, the mana is not very useful if you're getting it during your upkeep, but the other 2 are pretty damn good, especially that draw card thing. Very likely he'll get some value off that as the game progresses. I draw Mana Leak, and well, it's early in the game still, and I'm a little afraid of what Holonomic might do, but he's 1 mana off from casting his general still, and so I just need to develop my own mana here. So I'm going to play the Cold Steel Heart and name red with it, which is obviously vitally important. I don't know if Mr. Admiral Beckett Brass over here is going to put red mana into play, so the Felwar Stone is not a reliable source of that, and I definitely need red. So I'm just going to get that now. Most of my spells, I think I only have maybe one spell in the whole deck that's double red, and that's an Inferno Titan. Alright, Inferno Titan's one of the strongest creatures ever printed, and for some reason it costs like a dime or something online, and 50 cents or whatever in reality. So this guy casts Shadows of the Past. It's kind of interesting. Obviously the activation is really high, but it allows you to scry whenever a creature dies. And I guarantee creatures are going to be dying in this game. This guy's going to be doing a lot of scrying. In fact, I'd be surprised if he didn't scry through his whole deck by the time the game's over. Alright, Holonomic over here casts Bitter Blossom. Alright. Well, I'm sure he's got some token synergy, and then sure enough, right afterward he casts Skull Clamp. And he's got Bitter Blossom, Skull Clamp, as well as Dryad Arbor and Bird. This guy's clearly the threat right now. One thing about multiplayer is you always need to kind of balance between figuring out who the real threat is and devoting your resources to that person to constrain them, but not to the point of, one, making them your arch enemy, and two, letting the other two guys just kind of run roughshod over you. I've had a lot of situations where I've misjudged the texture of the board and the texture of the way the game is going, and I've devoted too many of my resources to killing one person, and that's let a weaker player take an advantageous position in the game and ultimately beat me, which is frustrating. So I'm still kind of fine-tuning my strategy for multiplayer and getting a better sense of it. And definitely one of the ways that you can play better, at least with regards to counterspells, is don't make lots of enemies. And on my next turn, I'm instantly rewarded by my deck for not only making this thing produce red mana, but for top decking a Vandal Blast to kill off that Clamp, which is just a critical play right now, given the fact that this guy's down to 3 cards in hand. And that Skull Clamp was going to allow him to just go absolutely nuts. So I'm very, very happy to have hit that. Plus, I've still got enough mana to both Mana Leak and use my Myriad Landscape. Although, honestly, it would be pretty tough for my opponents to play anything that I would want to Mana Leak and not be able to use the Landscape, because I need to get 5 mana to play. So he casts a Ruin Raider, which is kind of like a fixed Dark Confidant. Has to attack, but it does very much the same thing. Alright, Horobi guy does nothing. And Mr. Bitter Blossom guy makes a fairy. And he casts a Chrome Mox. Yeah, this guy's certainly not budget. There's a Masterpiece Chrome Mox. But that gets him to 5 mana, and he removes a Demonic Tutor from the game. That's bizarre. This is why you play with Ancient Tomb, right? If he gets, well, I guess he's still behind by 1 mana, but he could have actually Demonic Tutored for Gaia's Cradle as well, and that would have made 3 mana. Yeah, I guess he would have been... Yeah, he had enough mana to do that, actually. If he had tapped those 2, he could have gotten Gaia's Cradle, and he would have had 5 over the Chrome Mox. I don't know if he played with Gaia's Cradle or not, but certainly if he has it in his deck, it was a big mistake to imprint the Demonic Tutor over just getting a land that makes 3. So he plays Nath of the Gilt Leaf, and I'm absolutely not mana leaking that because I have a backup plan. Time to unleash one of these sweepers. And since I've got 2 sources of blue in play, as well as a Felwar Stone, which is going to make blue off Grixis Man, I decide I'm going to go get 2 mountains here. There's only 1 left in the deck. Sorry for not giving you a chance to see the contents of it, but I may do a deck tech for this deck if people are interested in it. I actually really think this deck is strong. I tested it a bunch in person yesterday, and it was performing extremely well. In fact, it beat my Dralnu deck in nearly every game in heads-up matches against a fairly competent pilot. Okay, so I'm just going to tap 4 mana here, and this is a no-brainer, Rolling Earthquake for 4, which absolutely demolishes Holonomic over here. Not only does it kill his general and his bird and his Dryad, but it deals 4 to him, and it kills his fairy, and it kills off the Raider as well. This is such a crippling blow to this Holonomic guy, to the point where I almost feel bad. But he's clearly playing the strongest of the 4 of our decks. And maybe he had it coming. That's such a beating. Lose 2 mana and your general, which now costs 7. So that's a huge setback for him, and that keeps him off my back for a while. I'm not really honestly too concerned about Pirate Boy. So it's really about Mr. Horobi over here, and he casts Arcane Adaptation. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's just something about creature types, and he's stuck on 3 land. So he's definitely not a happy camper. I think he says something in chat about not having any mana. So little P-baller, I kind of expected him to play Horobi right here, which would have been annoying because it would have prevented me from playing my commander, because it triggers just on targeting rather than on resolution. But fortunately, he just decides to cast a 3/3 Regenerator for 4, which is harmless. Alright, back to Mr. Bitterblossom. And he taps and plays a Golgari Signet and taps 2 more mana and plays Thorn of Amethyst. Ugh, God, annoying. Alright, so this guy's becoming persona non grata over here with all of his discard enchantments and Bitter Blossom and Thorn of Amethyst. So I look at this turn. I have the option, of course, playing my Muldrifter and drawing 2, but Yeah, in retrospect, that might have actually been a solid play to do. But I decided that I wanted to get a Nin engine online, and Jordy-N plus Ruined Ever plus Nin is a good way to do that. If Jordy-N's got this convenient 3 toughness, so I can shoot it repeatedly with Nin over multiple turns, provided that little P-baller doesn't play his general next turn. I can shoot Jordy-N repeatedly to draw 2 cards a turn, which is the same thing as the Muldrifter effect. So I decided to go. Plus, I get to draw a card off Jordy-N immediately, and I really want to hit another land drop, so I'm going to play that first, play Nin, draw a card, and I get a repeal, which is handy, especially against this Chrome Mox, but it's not the best thing. All right, it looks like, in the meantime, poor Nico Pro 83 has decided to bow out and take his pirates to another ocean, which I can totally understand. I think it's a little too competitive for him. All right, so that dropped the Mortivore down to a 2/2 as a creature left a graveyard. And now little P-baller decides, instead of playing his general again, which is... I guess I have a Nin the Pain Artist in play, and I could just shoot Horobi with it. So that's probably the reason why he does. He's cast Archfiend of Ifnir, a kind of annoying creature against my Nin the Pain Artist. But that's provided only he has things to cycle with. And I didn't actually see any cycling things this game, so it just made it be that he's playing with it, because it's a 5/4 for 5. You can't go wrong with that. Blood Gift Demon. Anyway, Mortivore's just going to chill. Can't attack me. And Holonomic can block it with his fairy, so he loses another life. And he pays 4 mana for Tanglewire. Ugh. So much annoying crap over there. Alright, well, obviously he's playing some sort of kind of annoying Nath-based stacks deck, which seems like the synergy actually works pretty well. You get all these free elves, and you kind of disrupt everybody with the stacks effects. Unfortunately, Tanglewire is super annoying right now, but I do have at least one play here. I think for a little while about various things I want to do, and I ultimately decide, I think for a second about shooting Jordy-N for 2, and then drawing a card. But the problem is that's going to take my hand size up to 9, and even if I hit a land, I can't. I'm only going to have 2 mana, and that means I can't play Felwar Stone because of the Thorn of Amethyst, which means I'll have 8 cards, and I'll have to discard, which means I'm going to trigger this dumb thing, and that would mean I would have to discard a land card in order prevent him from getting either a zombie or drawing a card, and I want neither of those things. So with that in mind, with the Tanglewire effect on the stack, I decided to just use Nin to draw 1, figuring that I can always just play the if I draw any land, I can play the Felwar Stone. You can see me tapping mana there, so I just shoot it for 1. I figure the chances are reasonably high of me drawing land. I haven't drawn any lands this game, actually, outside of that first island. And sure enough, there's a mountain right off of it, so I'm immediately rewarded. And then, with the ability still in the stack, I decide to repeal this guy's Chrome Mox. And I'm a little reluctant to throw the repeal away, because it does have some utility later on, maybe to handle the Bitter Blossom or one of the enchantments I can't deal with. But I feel like crippling this guy further, as he clearly has the most competitive deck, makes a lot of sense. And it's going to make it hard for him to continue to develop under his Thorn of Amethyst with that Chrome Mox. So all my shit's tapped. That's fine. I've drawn another land, and thanks to drawing just 1 card, I can play a land and be set. And I don't have to worry about little P-baller either, because he's going to get locked down for quite a while by the Tanglewire. And he decides he's mad at Holonomic too, so he just sends his 5/4 in there, kills a fairy, and scries. All right, 3 tokens. So I think Holonomic plays his things in the wrong order. He should certainly tap one of the fairies that he just summoned, as well as the Tanglewire and the Thorn, and he'd suffer no ill effects from Tanglewire at all. But for some reason he taps a Swamp, and then opts not to attack either. So I'm just going to fetch an island. And during upkeep, I can safely tap just an artifact, a land, and the Jordy-N. I've got enough mana to be comfortable. And I draw Control Magic, which is really very, very timely thing to get a hold of. It's going to give me some flexibility to dealing with the big monsters later, and possibly the Nath when it comes back down, as long as Horobi's not in play. But it is actually targeted removal too, in a pinch if Horobi is out there. So I think about tapping mana, and it's just not going to work out under Thorn of Amethyst as much as I want to play the Felwar Stone. And so eventually I just decide I'm going to say done, because I intend to shoot Jordy-N for 2 if I get the ability to do it, or potentially Mana Leak as well. Alright, Mind Stone, that's pretty harmless. And that 5/4 crashes in again, kills off another fairy, and allows him to scry. So he's going to hit all of his land drops for sure. Alright, Tanglewire is tangling itself down to 2. Now it's not affecting Holonomic at all. So he casts a Sylvan Scrying, and I didn't notice what card he imprinted at the time, and didn't really think about the Demonic Tutor for Gaia's Cradle play. So when I see him cast Sylvan Scrying, which would make 2 mana, and potentially more if he gets zombies, I determine I still need to keep this guy under control. And even though it means I can't use my Nin the Pain Artist at all, I decide it's worth it in order to just mana leak that, to keep him completely contained as long as possible, and he doesn't do anything. Because one thing to deal with these annoying permanents is to just make sure that the guy dies, which is my objective, and I think little P-ballers too. So we're kind of working in tandem to deal with that guy. All right, I have to tap 2 things. That's just a land in Jorien. Awesome. So I get Worn Power Stone, and I'm out of counters anyway, so this is a kind of no-brainer turn. I'm just going to put 3 more mana into play via artifacts. That gets me all the way up to, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 mana. Excellent. Looking really good. All right, Tangle Wire does a little more tangling. Still locks down Mordivor. And now Horobi comes out, and he casts Mogus's Marauder to punish me for tapping out on my turn rather than leaving all my mana untapped to use Nin. But I'm reluctant to use Nin because I don't have Reliquary Tower. Thought Vessel is over $2, so I don't have anything to give me plus hand size over 7. And as a result of that, with this Waste Not enchantment in play, I have to be very careful about going over 7 cards. So he casts Mogus's Marauder, which is kind of awesome in conjunction with his General. It allows him to target all of pretty much every creature equal to his Intimidate cost, and he's got a ton of Intimidate. It looks like 7. So that would kill 7 creatures thanks to Horobi, and that, of course, wipes both of our boards. But I've gotten value out of the Jorien at least. Nin kind of hung out for a little while. Not the best use of it, but whatever. It's kind of a neat combo, and now he gets to hit Holonomic for 5. So Holonomic continues to take damage, and he grumbled a little bit about not getting any lands, and me countering his lands. And then he pays me right back with Chains of Mephistopheles. God, so brutal. Of all the cards probably in the entire format, this is the one that punishes Nin, I think, more than just about any other card, given the fact that it completely neuters your ability to use your General, and it's an enchantment, a black enchantment, which is pretty much the hardest thing for me to interact with as far as all the permanent types in the game, and especially with budget. The range of cards I have that can actually stop Chains of Mephistopheles is practically 0, although I do happen to have 1 in hand, though he does have lots of fairies to block with. But that's going to be my objective now, is making sure that Holonomic is a dead man. At least I only have to tap 1 thing now. I draw Electrolyze. So I'm just going to cast the Electrolyze. This is to keep little P-baller off base. I know I can't draw a card from it, but this is to just kill his offense and kill Horobi to make him cost more. And that's not so much because I'm worried about Horobi right now, but it's more that it's sort of a countermeasure for the future. I want Horobi to cost more later on down the road, because if we eventually deal with Holonomic, I am going to have to deal with the Death's Whisper creature in order to use Nin effectively, especially because I can't target any creatures to draw cards. So I literally cannot win the game probably with Horobi in play, and right now it makes the most sense to kill it, because I'm also going to cast my Steel Hellkite. And this should be, I figure this will be fairly safe, given the fact that his Horobi is going to cost 6, and it gives him only 2 extra mana, and he only has 3 cards in hand now anyway. My main goal really is to somehow convince little P-baller to help me get through these fairies so that I can attack and use the Mighty Hellkite for 2, because that would be pretty good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty good. Alright, he just does nothing. He casts this bizarre creature, Shambling Swarm. That's the kind of thing you play with when you're playing Black Budget. Alright. And he casts another 2-mana enchantment. So now he's really vulnerable. I'm thinking, man, just let me draw Fire Ice or something. If I draw Fire Ice, this guy is dunzo. I mean, he literally will just drop down to 2. He'll drop down to 2 lands. Probably, well, in a useless Tangle Wild, that'll probably be it. So I draw Preordain, which of course I can't cast because of stupid Chains of Mephistopheles. So I'm just going to send the Steel Hellkite over, kill the fairy, which allows more scrying from little P-baller. And I gave some thought to playing Nin here, just as having something to do. Yeah, and eventually decided to cast her, since there's probably no reason not to. I have so much mana that I can just chain cast her for the foreseeable future. I did think about casting Muldrifter, as I don't feel like the Earthquake is that valuable, and certainly the Preordain is not. And I really wanted to get a counterspell to protect my Steel Hellkite, but it was too inconsistent to me. Maybe I should have done the Preordain instead and swapped Earthquake for one of the top 3 cards of my deck in order to get a counterspell, given that I haven't drawn one Mana Leak. So I think this was a judgment call that was probably in retrospect wrong, given how important the Steel Hellkite was for my game plan. But I don't actually have a guaranteed way of getting through the fairies yet. All right, he casts Staff of Nin. The irony being that Staff of Nin is one of the arch enemies of Nin. And my hope was, and I immediately sent a PM to this guy to tell him that we needed to gang up to kill the Fairy Rogue, and that all of these 2-mana problems would be gone if he just let my dragon live for one more turn. And so he agreed. And I said, well, all right, all we have to do here is just kill off the 2 fairies between the Staff of Nin and Nin herself, and I'll be able to go over there and munch up everything. But he does have Earthcraft, which is a little distressing, because it means he can potentially get more mana. Sure enough, he shoots off the creature with the staff, but he gets another one. And then, like this, look at this, under Thorn of Amethyst, thanks to drawing a land that turn, Holonomic casts Damnation. Oh, so brutal. Oh, Dragon, I was counting on you. So Nin dies. I don't even get to use her. Not that I would really want to under Chains of Mephistopheles. But I lose the Dragon, and that is one of my most important tools in this entire matchup. It's going to make things a lot harder. But we will soldier on. He's down to 2 cards, and the other guy only has 2. So I draw Trinket Mage, and I decide my hand is so dead at this point. Trinket Mage is not doing anything, that I need to just play the Muldrifter here. Plus, it's going to put some more pressure back on Holonomic. So I cast Muldrifter. First, I'm going to discard Trinket Mage. Actually, I guess discard Preordain. I draw a Braid. Extremely timely, given the fact that this guy's got Staff of Nin in play. And even though he'd have to cycle rather than draw extra cards with it thanks to Chains, I still need it off the board for a long-term game plan. And I draw Everflowing Chalice, which would have been what I would have fetched with Trinket Mage anyway, so that's super handy. And unfortunately, discarding a creature gives him a zombie, and he gets some mana off of the... Oh, that's right, yeah, actually, he would have been able to draw a card off me discarding Preordain, but because of his own Chains of Mephistopheles, he doesn't get a free card, and he opts to just keep his hand. Alright, so I'm going to just cast a Soul Ring here, 4 mana thing, and that allows me to Braid away the staff before he can draw extra cards. So my hand is dead in the water here. It is not looking good. Really not looking good, actually. I feel like the guy playing mono black has a big advantage right now. And sure enough, he plays Cauldron of Souls, which is incredibly powerful synergy with his commander. Choose any number of target creatures. Each of those creatures gains Persist until end of turn. So this allows him to target any creature in play with Horobi out simply by tapping it, not even mana. So he has the ability to just continuously kill every creature in play every single turn. It is gnarly. And I've lost both a Braid and Vandal Blast. It's going to be a tough game from this point. At least Holonomic has to spend a lot of mana to get his general back. But sure enough, he has, because of the Earthcraft, he's got exactly enough mana now to tap out and play his general again. And I guess I could steal it with Control Magic. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I know that this dumb Horobi is going to come down next turn and just kill everything. So I decide I'm just going to leave the Control Magic in my hand as a potential way to interact with Horobi later to kill it and maybe get a Nin activation off. And then I draw Muddle the Mixture, which is actually very, very interesting because that's going to allow me to get one of my extremely important tools, not Cyclonic Rift, but the other one, which is Into the Royal. But first, we've got other things to do. I see this guy at 22, and his creatures are tapped. And that means Earthquake for 9 is going to crush his dreams again. Drops him all the way to 13 and allows me to hit him with the Muldrifter. So, of course, even though this guy is actually the real threat, I'm not too scared about Holonomic. My only way to deal with these dumb Chains of Mephistopheles is to make sure that this guy dies. So that's my long-term game plan. And I transmute Muddle the Mixture afterward to get Into the Royal. And again, even though I discarded a non-creature, non-land, Holonomic can't draw a card with it because of Chains. Alright, let's see what happens here. Alright, so Horobi's back, and that kills off my Muldrifter, of course, as well as the Fairy. And he gets to scry some more, but that's all that's happening. Alright. And he puts a creature back on top of his deck. What did he get? Revealed. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, that's right. He let Nath the Guiltleaf die, and then he put it back on top of his deck, which is actually not a bad play, given the fact that it's getting prohibitively expensive. So I draw an island, and I just hold that because I'm thinking maybe I'll draw Forbid down the road, or maybe one of these guys has discard. So he draws a card with his Mind Stone and immediately has to discard in advance of it, which gives this guy a zombie as well. I don't think he realized what Chains does. And he plays this Monument. And he kills both of his creatures. Just amazing. Smashes for 4, dropping him down to just 6 with a fairy thing in play. So he's dead next turn, so this is looking really good. And I think seeing the writing on the wall as far as his death coming up, Holonomic just throws caution to the wind and casts some Mana Crypt. Yeah, I feel like he got screwed here. I think he used his Vora Stronghold to put Nath of the Guiltleaf on top of his deck, but accidentally screwed up and put it back in the command zone. Not that it really would have necessarily mattered, but he does have enough mana to replay it. But, of course, we all know that that's not long for this world, given the fact that he's got Cauldron of Souls and Horobi in play. All right, so Chains of Mephistopheles in play, no way to draw cards, an infinite ability to kill my Nin the Pain Artist. If only there was one card in this entire format that would allow me to draw cards without actually drawing cards. Why, thank you, deck. Future Sight right on top. Unbelievably lucky. That is such an insane card to draw right now. It is literally the perfect card in my entire deck. I don't think I could have drawn anything better than that. And there's a Rewind on top, too. So with the Rewind there, I decided to play my island, figuring I'm just going to be riding this Future Sight all day long. That really changes things a lot. The only issue is whether or not Little P-Baller decides to kill off Holonomic or kill me. And he rightfully concludes that Holonomic is in a pretty much lethal position, given the fact that he's got a ticking time bomb of both Mana Crypt and Bitter Blossom in play, and doesn't really have any long prospects. So he's going to send his Horobi at me. So taken 4. Obviously can't block. And post-combat, of course, he's going to go and polish off poor Holonomic's creatures for the millionth time. After all that work that he went through to get them into play, all those contortions, including casting a suicidal Mana Crypt, they just died of a humble tap of the Cauldron of Souls. It's rather ironic, actually, that card is about persist in your creatures coming back to life over and over again, and it's an instrument of destruction. Fortunately, Little P-Baller is not really doing anything else. During upkeep, to add insult to injury, Holonomic takes a big chunk out of his life total from his Mana Crypt, and he's down to just 1 with the Bitter Blossom in play. So he is donezo. It's just a matter of whether or not he can meddle with me on his very last turn. And sure enough, that last card in his hand is Sadistic Hypnotist, which I have no doubt whatsoever he would use on me, despite the fact that his opponent, Little P-Baller, has been the one who's dealt all the damage to him. So he casts the Sadistic Hypnotist, and as little as I like it, because I was really relying on this Rewind to keep Horobi out of play while I played a Nin the Pain Artist on the next turn, I unfortunately have to Rewind it, because he would just obviously sack his 1/1 token and make me discard my Control Magic and my End of the Royal. But at least it's free. And tap 4 useless lands. And that is the last shell that Holonomic will fire this game. He's basically done, barring Little P-Baller somehow saving him. And on my turn, I draw an island, and lo and behold, there's a Forbid sitting on top of my deck. Unbelievable. And actually, it's kind of a bit of a minor punish for that island that I played all recklessly earlier after holding on to it. It'd be amazing if I had a couple of islands in my hand right now. That would be superb. But I may have to buy it back either way, depending on what Little P-Baller does. And he casts Erebos, God of the Dead. And because my entire game plan now, I don't have to worry about any of these permanents anymore now that Holonomic is going out of the game. I don't need to care or worry about the Chains of Mephistopheles, which means that I don't really need both of these cards to interact with Horobi, as long as I have a counterspell available, especially because the Cauldron of Souls doesn't actually do anything. And I apologize for the endless Skype messages I'm getting. The Cavern of Souls doesn't actually do anything if Horobi is not in play. So if I keep Horobi out of play using counter magic, then I don't need to bounce Cavern of Souls, and that means I only need one of these 2 cards. And since I know Control Magic won't ever work on Horobi, and this at least has more flexibility, I decide that it is time to buy back the Forbid. And it's so cool that you can do that you can literally buy back a card off the top of your library with Future Sight. So I'm going to pay 3, actually pay 4, because of that stupid Thorn of Amethyst. Discard the island and the Control Magic to buy back Forbid. And that does, of course, and for a second there I kind of panicked, because I thought for a second, oh my god, I might have let this guy gain life, but then I realized that this thing doesn't actually gain you life. That's not one of its modes. Waste Not doesn't let you gain life. so he can't really do anything, even though I'm discarding twice. Buyback and stop Erebos. No way in hell can I let him have that with this much mana in play. And life gain mechanism as well. Could actually allow him to claw back into the game and potentially keep up with future sight, so we can't be having that. Alright. And with that, Holonomic bows out, knowing that he's dead on the next turn, which I appreciate him doing, because it means that I don't have to worry about Thorn of Amethyst on my turn. He was really, honestly, a really cool guy. Had a really good attitude and stuff about, even though he kind of got abused by my stuff at the beginning of the game. A lot of people get really salty, and he was super cool about it. Alright, so he transmutes and gets a Harvester of Souls, which would have been absolutely backbreaking if he had had this card out earlier with all the tokens that kept dying. But fortunately it costs a lot of mana. It costs all the way up to 6, so he's not going to really be able to do that plus anything else. Alright, so he's going to hit me for 4. I'm not killing this yet, mainly because the life total doesn't really matter, and I'd like to see what's on top of my deck first before I decide to whether or not I want to kill it. So there's a Highland Lake there, which is quite nice. Play that for free, and then unfortunately there's an Izzet Guildgate there. So I'm just going to cast Into the Royal to kill off his Horobi. And that means that the way is clear for Nin the Pain Artist. Down she comes for 6 mana. Alright, now I have only one objective, and that's keep Horobi out of play. And Horobi currently costs 8 mana, so he doesn't really have a way to cast it twice in a turn, barring something weird like Cabal Coffers, which would really, really wreck my plans if he had it. But fortunately he doesn't. And he decides instead to cast Harvester of Souls, which, when I think about it, I don't really care about at all. I've got 1,000,000 outs against this thing, and 1,000,000 mana to invest in Nin the Pain Artist, as well as this Temple of the False God in hand. So I'm expecting a Nin activation in excess of 10 cards coming up, and one of those cards is certainly going to be a solution to Harvester of Souls. I'm not concerned about it at all, and that's not Horobi. So the coast is clear. Oh my goodness, I get to activate Nin after all. Commander Sphere, that's quite good. Just going to play that for free. And look at that, Frost Titan sitting on top. One of my cool finishers, actually. Not entirely convinced that this card belongs in the deck, but I've always been kind of impressed by it, and it's certainly been a huge problem whenever I've faced it. It's a little bit like Tamio, that annoying Planeswalker, which of course is not available in the budget format, but Frost Titan costs nothing and does very much the same kind of thing while beating your opponent in the face for 6, and it's a phenomenal Nin outlet as well. So I'm going to play Frost Titan, and then there's another island on top for free. So delicious, and of course I get to tap down his guy, play an island, and then sitting, waiting for me on top of the deck is Stoic Rebuttal to go with my Forbid with buyback. We are looking pretty solid now. Alright, little P-baller. Can't really do much. He really should have cast his Horobi last turn, because that would have at least burned the Forbid and given him a chance. If I didn't luck into a counterspell, would have given him a chance to come back. So he plays Trip Noose, which is kind of a neat little gadget to go with his Horobi Deathswale, and I'm just going to counter that with Stoic Rebuttal off the top because it's free, and that reveals Fact or Fiction. Hits just keep on coming. And then he casts a big mana spell, Grave Betrayal, which combos incredibly well with his commander and all of his internal deck synergies. I really actually quite like his deck. It's really neat for a budget deck too, and quite effective. But of course, I don't expect that any of my guys are going to be dying outside of my Nin the Pain Artist, so this doesn't really do anything. And that leaves the way open for me to shoot Frost Titan for 5 at the end of the turn, which is definitely better than just casting a Fact or Fiction. Splat. I know he can't even target it with some removal either because of its ability. So I draw 5. Raw. Look at that. And Disciple of the Ring waiting on top. One of my favorite budget creatures. How big is this thing? And actually, you can't see it right now, but the clock has been ticking steadily on this game. And in fact, I think at this point, Little P-Baller is down to about a minute and a half left, and I'm somewhere in that same neighborhood. I think a little bit more time than him, maybe 10 or 15 seconds more. But I was under a super time crunch at this point. I had to win within, I think, about roughly 2 to 3 turns. Fortunately, I've got some offense going right now, so it's not too big of a deal. I'm just going to play that, smash him for 6, and lock his guy down. And I'm going to play Disciple of the Ring. And this thing is sort of Psychotog-esque. Look how many instants there are on the graveyard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, well, not instants, and sorceries, 10, 11, 12. There's 12, so I can already pump it to deal 15 damage, which is nearly lethal in a single hit. And he casts Plague Wind. I'm just going to memory lapse that. I could, of course, spend mana to make him pay extra using the Disciple, but I don't have that kind of time. Like, you can't see it, but I think I'm down to about 1 minute and 15 at this point, and he's under a minute. So end of turn. Just going to sink another 7 mana into Nin. Shoot my card drawing machine. Drawing 5 more, and then cast Factor Fiction as well, because might as well. And off this, get 3 land, Talrand, and Capsize. This is obviously just going through the motions and just running out the clock here. I'm going to keep Talrand, which is make some 2/2s. Flip over Palladium Mirror, which is another card that I've started using in my budget decks that I'm quite fond of. It's actually very analogous to Worn Powerstone. Obviously, it's more vulnerable, but it can be shot by Nin the Pain Artist and can attack in a pinch too, which is kind of nice. It's an island, Flametongue Kavu. Just going to cast Talrand. Smash for 9. I don't even bother to remove cards in my graveyard because it's probably faster, given all the activated and triggered abilities. It's faster to just take another turn than it is to spend a bunch of mana and target my stuff while the clock is ticking. And then I reveal my Soul Ring, the other card that I added that's not budget. I'm just targeting my Frost Titan there. Play that. Play Palladium Mirror. Discard some junk. Goes back to his turn. He's got about 15 seconds left. He taps some mana, and he plays his last-ditch Horobi's Wail, which, of course, I can counter trivially with Void Shatter. And that makes a token. And I Spell Pierce it to make another token. Pay the 2. Get another Drake. And that is it. Not only does he know he's dead, but I think he literally runs out of time on this turn. And I had about 50 seconds left, so there was no hope of a draw. But he's literally dying on this turn. I've got Forbid Lock and Negate and Counterflux and Complicate and more than lethal damage in play. So that is it. One of the best, most dramatic multiplayer games that I've played in a long time. Played with the budget deck against one budget deck, one random Pirates deck, and a pretty nasty stack-style green-black deck that was clearly not budget. I thought that this game really did a good job of showcasing all the tools that still exist in the budget format when you don't have access to the best that Blue has to offer in the forms of its Planeswalkers and its degenerate counter magic and its degenerate theft and all the good acceleration and stuff. But the deck can still work extremely well. You just have to make good card choices and obviously some sound play choices as well. I think that my deck delivered some very timely answers this game. Certainly the Vandal Blast right off the top to kill that Skull Clamp could have changed things. The Abrade was super timely to kill the Staff of Nin. The Future Sight was amazing under Veldic Shackles. Like, a lot of things went just right this game to work out to this result. But I really hope you guys enjoyed that and hope you enjoyed listening to my multiplayer decision-making process. It's a completely different animal from 1v1, but it's still very intriguing and quite interesting to visit from time to time. I will have more single-player games in the near future, and see you guys later. Take care.